Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. So, this is gonna be a pretty important video. This is going to be my spoiler review of Jurassic World Dominion, which I saw a few days ago with my girlfriend, my mom, my stepdad, and my siblings. And they thought it was pretty good. I also thought it was pretty good, but it has some flaws, some major flaws, which I'll get into later, but as always, before this video starts, a huge shout out to Goji98 and Headley101, even though I think he just goes by Headley now. Again, they're the people bringing back Jurassic Park Builder. Go subscribe to them. They are awesome at what they do. Absolutely awesome. And without any further ado, here's my spoiler review of Jurassic World Dominion. Now, while editing this video, I will include a timestamp where you can fast forward into the video where there will be no more spoilers. Even though that might be most of the video, excluding the outro. And anyways, on with the review. Now, I'm going to start off with the things I personally liked about the film. And that biggest one would have to be the dinosaurs. I thought, for the most part, the dinosaurs were handled fairly well. My two personal favorite new dinosaurs that we show, even though one's not technically a dinosaur anyway, were the Therizinosaurus and Quetzalcoatlus. Both of them look amazing. The Therizinosaur especially looks great. I love that scene where it's stalking Claire in the jungle, and I thought its inclusion in the final fight scene was great. And I love the scene too in the final fight when it and Rexy are fighting the Giga. Again, huge spoilers. When it looks like Rexy dies, spoiler alert, she doesn't, we hear this roar and the Giganotosaurus turns around and the Therizinosaurus is there. And they fight. At one point the Theri actually breaks a claw, which if you've seen the claws on a Therizinosaurus, they're like Freddy Krueger times 10. That's one way of putting it. But yeah, Rexy gets up, beats down the Giga a few times until it loses its balance and the Therizinosaur thrusts its claws into the Giga's neck and chest, which I thought was a very satisfying end to the Giga. Speaking of which, I thought the Giga... Actually, no, I'm going to talk about the Giganotosaurus later. Anyways, yeah, I thought the Therizinosaurus looked great and was used very well. Quetzalcoatlus I also thought was used great and looked great. But actually, this is one huge glaring issue I have with this movie. One thing that Fallen Kingdom and actually even the Lost World got this right. Sorry about that, my dogs are barking. But anyways, one thing that Fallen Kingdom and the Lost World specifically did exceptionally well was to show new dinosaur species consistently. Like in Fallen Kingdom, we see the Baryonyx more than once, we see the Allosaurus more than once, Carnotaurus more than once, Sino more than once, etc., etc., you get the point. In the Lost World, we see the Stegosaurus several times, we see Pachys a few times, we see the Compys a few times. Here, though, they decided to go the Jurassic Park 3 route, and whenever we see a new dinosaur, it's only in one sequence or scene, and after that we never see them again. And unfortunately, that befell quite a few species of dinosaur in this movie. Probably I think the dinosaurs that suffered the most from that were the Pyroraptor and Dimetrodon, who I think each were great additions to the franchise. I thought they both looked great. I thought they both fit in just fine. Particularly the Dimetrodon, because that thing is older than dinosaurs. It's not a dinosaur. It's much older than dinosaurs. I'm going to start out with the Pyroraptor. The Pyroraptor only got one scene. And most of that one scene is what you saw in the trailers or TV spots. I was really disappointed by that. I really was. I thought Pyroraptor was one dinosaur that was teased a while ago, like back in this movie was still in production. Like before COVID hit, at least I think it was. We get to Dominion, only gets one scene. And it ends very, very quickly. And don't get me wrong, I think that the fact that the Pyroraptor could swim, I thought was cool, if not a bit odd. I'm sure raptors swam like that in real life. Well, I know they swam, obviously, but I don't think that... I don't know if they'd swim like that. I mean, in the movie, the Pyroraptor swims like a penguin. I don't know if you noticed that. It swims sort of penguinish, which I guess you could contribute to the fact that this movie tried to go for more paleo-accurate dinosaurs. And since dinosaurs are much more closely related to birds, and the penguin is a bird, I don't know. But anyways, the Dimetrodon is in a really, really cool sequence. My dog just walked into my room, where Ellie, Maisie, and Grant are all in the mine, the amber mine, and they go further into it, and then the camera zooms out, and we get this really, really cool shot of a Dimetrodon's fin, like, sticking up out of the water, sort of like Jaws. And there's a really cool jump scare that actually scared me and my girlfriend quite a bit. When they're climbing up, there's this dark hole in front of them, and I think it was Grant holds up a torch and a Dimetrodon's head pops out. I thought that was a really cool jump scare. But yeah, after that, we don't see the Dimetrodons again, which I thought was kind of an unwise choice. I think Dimetrodon would have been great to show off more in this movie, but they didn't. And a lot of the dinosaurs from the prologue were only shown once. In fact, I think the only dinosaur from the prologue that's consistently shown is the Dreadnoughtus. I meant new dinosaur that we've seen. I know dinosaurs like the Gallimimus and Allosaurus we see quite a bit of in this movie, but Dreadnoughtus is the only one that's really shown consistently, and it looks great even though the mouth looks a bit derpy. It sort of looks like a lazy smile. Like if you took your fingers and did this, that's kind of what it looks like. But excluding Dreadnoughtus, we don't get a lot of the new dinosaurs in the prologue. The Moros and Trepidos, we do see that quite a few times. Oviraptor, we don't see at all. Quetzal, I already mentioned, we show a few times. And the Giganotosaurus, despite being the main dinosaur bad guy in this film, it's one of the... how do I put this? It's one of the most relaxed antagonists I've seen in a movie. I say this because, okay, Colin Trevorrow referred to it as the Joker of dinosaurs, and what he meant by that was the Giga likes to see the world burn. I didn't get that vibe from the Giga at all. I really didn't. I think maybe what he was referring to was the scene in the forest where all the characters are together and the Giga stalks them. I think maybe that's what he was referring to with all the fire in the background. But I really didn't get a Joker vibe or any other DC villain vibe from it at all. Now, the Giga design in this movie, it's grown on me, I've got to admit. At first, I really didn't like it. I thought they made it look way too Godzilla-ish, way too monster movie and less dinosaur. But I will admit, now that I've seen the full movie, it's grown on me quite a bit. I think it looks alright. It's nowhere near as bad as I used to think it was. But yeah, and what else? Oh, another big positive I have with this movie, I was going to say the characters, but some of the characters are great. Ellie, Ian, and Alan are all just as great as they were in previous movies. I thought the scene where the new cast and the old cast come together was handled great. One of my biggest fears when this movie when it was announced that the original trio was coming back, was that they would get was that they would never have a big reunion like Star Wars The Last Jedi. One thing that people criticized about the sequel Star Wars movies, and they have a fair point, was that Luke, Han, Leia, and Lando were never given a proper big reunion. Not like all of them were never together. And yeah, they have a fair point. And I was afraid that that would happen in this movie. I was also afraid that the old cast would be overshadowed by the new cast, but thankfully neither of those things happened. And I was really, really happy. They all got this big reunion, and Malcolm is probably my favorite character in this movie. Owen and Claire's relationship is another big positive I have with this movie. You can tell that they have really grown on each other since the first Jurassic World. And I thought their attempt at being parents for Maisie, Maisie, as much as I hate to bash child actors, I don't know if Maisie is a bit annoying in some scenes. Which you could contribute to her being 14. It's probably just teenage angst, but I don't know. She isn't handled all that well in some scenes. And the twist that I don't know how to put this either. She's sort of a clone, sort of not. What happened was her mother worked with Dr. Wu and lived on Site B. And she had monitor lizard DNA in her, and monitor lizards, for those of you who don't know, can reproduce asexually, which means they don't need a mate to reproduce. And that's what happened with Maisie. That's how Maisie was born. Which I thought was an interesting twist. And that also happened with Blue and Beta. Beta is Blue's baby, and Blue, being a female, needs a male to reproduce. And since she also had monitor lizard DNA in her, she could reproduce asexually. And Blue, personally, I don't think was handled that well in this movie. Neither was the Mosasaur, actually, who I will get to in just one moment. Blue, in this movie, like I said with the Therizinosaurus, we don't see that much of. Sorry guys, I'm getting kind of confused, but Blue we only see towards the beginning of the film, and we only see her towards the very end of the film when her and Beta get back together, because Beta gets kidnapped by an old hunting rival, I think a hunting rival, by a poacher, and Owen has to chase her down. And like I said, Owen and Claire's relationship has really grown. You can tell that they really do care about each other. And Dr. Wu, I thought had an interesting redemption arc. One thing I was hoping this movie would do was that follow his arc in the novels like the previous two movies did. Because if you don't know, in the novels, Wu went through this whole thing where he wanted the dinosaurs to be these big, slow, stupid, dopey animals like people would have envisioned in their childhoods. But Hammond was like, no, make them fast, make them agile. I'm really sorry for that horrible accent, apologies. And that's sort of what happened in Jurassic World, in that scene where him and Masrani are talking. I was honestly hoping they would go for that, like have his arc from the novels. This movie did take quite a few stuff from the novels, which I'll also be talking about in a moment. His redemption arc is he's talking about this great mistake that he's done, and that was unleashing the locusts, which, believe it or not, are the main threat of the movie. Now, like I said with the Giga design, they are growing on me, but nowhere near as fast as the Giga design has grown on me. At first, I got Camp Cretaceous, Horizon Zero Dawn robot dogs, or whatever those things were, vibes from them. And I think we all know how everyone felt about the robot dogs. And I was worried that the same thing would happen here. The locusts... Now, believe it or not, some prehistoric insects were as big as the locusts were in this movie, but I don't know why having them as the main threat was a good idea. I mean, if they were prehistoric insects, which I don't even know if they were now, if they were actual prehistoric insects, that would have made a bit more sense. I think here they're just normal locusts with steroids or something. And Wu is actually realizing how horrible, all the horrible things he's done, and he wants to release a locust with a certain gene in it, and that gene will pass on to other locusts until the entire swarms are dead. And one of the biggest negatives I have with the film is the way the locusts are portrayed in the last third of it. They get set on fire, and Dodson, who I'll also be talking about soon, releases them into the Biosyn Sanctuary in order to destroy all evidence of the whole dinosaur sanctuary. He sets them on fire, living insects on fire, and they... Amazingly, the locusts survive. I don't know how. I mean, their legs are on fire, their wings, if... In real life, if a locust's wings caught fire, I don't think the locust would ever be able to use them again. But here, I don't know, that was just sort of weird. And Dodson, I want to talk about Dodson for a bit, because his character, I think for the most part, was taken straight out of the Lost World novel. Because if you don't know this, in the Lost World novel, Dodson is a truly horrible person. He's willing to throw anyone under the bus, willing to hurt anybody just so he can get his way. And if he doesn't, he sort of acts like an impetulant child who cries when he doesn't get what he wants from a toy store. That's sort of how Dodson is in the Lost World novel. At one point in the novel, he tries to drown Sarah Harding by tossing her overboard a boat. And here, I could kind of see a lot of that seeping its way into Campbell Scott's portrayal of Dodson. And if you're wondering, no, Campbell Scott is not the same person who played him in the original movie, in that scene where him and Nedry are at the cafe. And that's because the original actor who played him, Cameron Thor, is currently in prison right now. He did some pretty horrible stuff that I don't really want to discuss it in this video, but he did some horrible things, and Campbell Scott came in to replace him, who I thought did a decent job. He kind of looked like a mock-up Steve Jobs, but he did an alright job. I also want to talk about his death scene, which is pretty well done. He's in the subway train, and the train breaks down, so he then goes out into the rail tunnel to sort of find his way out, and then smoke starts leaking from a pipe, and then we hear the hooting of a Dilophosaurus, who finally came back, yay! And then the camera pans down, and we see like the crests on top of the heads of a Dilophosaurus, and then he runs back into the train before the Dilophosaurus can catch him, and only to discover that there's more Dilophosaurs in there waiting for him, and they just spit their venom all over him, all over the place. And then one of them stands over him, opens its jaws, and they close around his head, and then the camera cuts to black, and we hear his scream. I really like that scene. It's one of my favorites in the movie. Although it was pretty obvious that the Dilophosaurs were animatronics. To give you an idea on how obvious it was, the one in 1993 Jurassic Park looked much better than the ones in 2022's Jurassic World Dominion. That is not a word of a lie. I mean, heck, in the first movie, when the frill popped out, you can see like strings attached to the side of the head, and how that worked was there were people off camera who would pull the strings and that caused the frill to come out. But these, they just look off. You could really tell that their movements were kind of limited. And you could just tell they were animatronics with the limited and almost stiffly movements. That also happened with the Giga in a few shots. You could tell that the Giga was an animatronic. The animatronics look great. I'm not saying they look horrible. It's just, it was pretty obvious they were animatronics. And another thing, I thought Ramsey Cole's character was pretty good. I thought he was handled very well. Same with DeWanda Wise's character, Kayla. I thought they were both handled very well. And since Colin Trevorrow did say that they were the quote-unquote future of this franchise, I wouldn't mind seeing them in another movie or spin-off or TV series or video game, anything. I thought they were pretty good characters. I thought Kayla was pretty cool. I love how at the end, when she's talking, at the end when when all the chaos has ended, at least for now, she's in an interview with these news reporters talking about the Biosyn facility destruction. And she says, they owe me another plane. And I thought that was a pretty funny line. She also has another cool line right before the Quetzalcoatlus attacks her plane. She looks up and she sees the wing of one of them outside of the cockpit windows and she says, Quetzalcoatlus, Lake Cretaceous. Probably should have stayed there. Sorry, I just really liked that line. And now I'm going to talk about some of the negatives I had with the film. One of the biggest negatives, this is just me nitpicking kind of, the story is paced way too fast. I'm serious, this movie just goes by like that. The pacing is just so sped up and so fast that all the scenes I just talked about it was like impossible to remember them all. Everything was going so fast. And in the first movie, things are played out kind of slow. People are talking about the park, and then they go to the park and see the dinosaurs. Here we're just thrown in, the dinosaurs are there, and then it just speeds off. The pacing needs to be fixed. I'm personally hoping that there's an extended cut with a bunch of different deleted scenes, and one of those deleted scenes hopefully has the Oviraptor in it. And I thought the movie just goes by so fast. I thought this movie was going to be well over 3 hours long. It's probably around 2.5 hours long, but it flies by. And there's also, one positive I have about the film, there's tons of different callbacks to the novels and previous movies. I already mentioned Dodson's character. And this is pretty interesting. Towards the end of the film, when Dodson's trying to get out of the Biosyn facility, he's stuffing a bunch of stuff into a briefcase, and one of those things he grabs is a Barbasol can that's kind of rusted and old and dented and has bits of mud on it. Here's what I think about that. Camp Cretaceous Season 5 hasn't come out yet, and it's probably and it has the Barbasol can in it, Nedry's cryo can. My personal opinion is that Dodson is in Season 5, or at least some Biosyn character is. And they recover the can in Season 5, and Dodson is able to take it. That's what I personally think. Anyways, what do I talk about next? Some of the CG, like I said with the animatronics, you could tell was CGI. In the opening scene in the film, when Owen Grady's chasing down a bunch of Parasaurolophuses, in one of the wide shots, when the Paras were moving, you could kind of tell that they were CGI. That or the screen was just really blurry, but I don't know, you could tell some of them were CGI. And I think the ending of this film did leave some things to be desired. Personally, I think that... How many times have I said personally in this video? Someone watching, can you comment down below just how many times I've said the word personally in this video? And what else is there to talk about? I thought the Atrociraptor chase through Malta was pretty exciting. In fact, that whole sequence in Malta underneath in the underground was with the dinosaur black market. That whole subplot I thought was really, really cool. And it's just really, really interesting. Although I'd really like to know what that guy was barbecuing. Like, there's a shot of a guy on a grill with all these weirdly shaped pieces of meat that he's doing a rotisserie with. I'd really like to know what that is, because if that's dinosaur meat, like if they butchered a dinosaur like how you butcher a cow, and then they used the meat and ate it, I really won't know what to say. But we also, in this scene, we get the Lystrosaurus, which I thought would have a bigger role in this film, to say the least. Also in that sequence is a baryonyx with a robotic arm. Yeah, that's never explained. In fact, that whole sequence with that baryonyx ends almost as soon as it begins. But it does lead to the cool death of that poacher I mentioned earlier. The Lystrosaurus, which I didn't even know if Lystrosaurs were able to do this in real life, clamps down on like this part of his arm, and then a baby Carnotaurus eats this arm. And then Owen's like, "Where is Maisie? Where's Maisie?" And he tells Owen, and then the baryonyx runs up to him, and this is the first live-action kill of a baryonyx, by the way. Comes up and eats his face off. While that might seem a bit over the top, I thought it was pretty cool. Again, I don't even know if Lystrosaurus could do that in real life. By the way, Lystrosaurus is not a dinosaur. Lystrosaurus is not a dinosaur. It never was a dinosaur. I think it's older than dinosaurs. And yeah, that's pretty much all I really have to say. Wait, one more thing. I thought Omar Sy returning his berry was an alright choice, even though that whole thing with the Atrociraptors, where you had the laser dot, where they'd follow it around like a cat, I think is basically the same thing with that rifle they used for the Indoraptor in Fallen Kingdom, where it had a red dot sight. They pointed it at something, and the frequency from that red dot would allow the Indoraptor to attack. I'm pretty sure that's what was going on here. And the Atrociraptors look really, really cool, and the chase with them is super exciting, and it's a really cool action set piece. It's really, really fun to watch, but we never see the Atrociraptors again, or find out what happens to them. I think the only name of an Atrociraptor in the film, all 4 Atrociraptors have names. The only one I can remember is Ghost. And I can only remember Ghost's name because it was a different color than the other 3. That's the only reason why. And I'm assuming Ghost drowns because she gets thrown into the Caribbean and... No, not Caribbean. Why did I say Caribbean? Mediterranean Sea, and we just never see the Atrociraptors again. Maybe some of them lived, maybe some of them didn't. We might never know, honestly. And the Mosasaurus, we only see twice. Once at the beginning of the film, once at the end. And that's it. So that was my review of Jurassic World Dominion. I liked it. I thought it was great, even though it did have some major flaws. Personally, I'd rank it a 7.5, or maybe even an 8 out of 10. As for ranking it with all the other films, I'd probably rank it above Jurassic Park 3, Jurassic World, and Fallen Kingdom, but maybe below the first movie, The Lost World, and Camp Cretaceous, if we're going by canonical entries. Anyways, that's going to do it for me, guys. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you leave... If you enjoyed it, leave a like, subscribe, hit the bell icon so you never miss any new videos. And let me all know what your thoughts on Jurassic World Dominion are, because I'm kind of curious, because I know this movie has proven to be pretty divisive among fans and critics alike. And if you want to know what I'm talking about, just go to the Rotten Tomatoes score for this movie, because it's really, really divisive. Anyways, I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, leave a like, subscribe, hit the bell icon so you never miss any new videos. See you all in the next one.